you would turn to your bulletin or take the bulletins out. All watch up here. "6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him.
Then Mary took an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume.
But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who later betrayed him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put in it.
Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save the perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me.
Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well. For on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. You may be seated. What is it that you will be remembered for? Think about that. What is it that you will be remembered for? In today's society, people seem to be dropping like flies from whatever position of authority they seem to have, or because of something that happened in their past. If the Me Too movement has its way, or for that matter, half the politicians in Washington, D.C. have their way, every man will be put in jail for something he did years ago. Now, don't get me wrong. As an ex-prisoner, I believe that we are accountable for our actions and that we deserve to be punished for our crimes. If I hadn't been held accountable, I truly don't know what kind of sick person I would be today. But I am also a believer in forgiveness, mercy, and second chances. But I don't see any of that for those who are caught up in this Me Too movement, or in politics, for that matter. Maybe that's because the accused haven't been punished yet, or in some cases not convicted of a crime. You know, we are a nation of laws. One of those laws is that a man or a woman is innocent until proven guilty. But I think it probably has more to do with accountability. Taking responsibility for their part in whatever was done. The accusations bring out a flaw in character if they admit to any part of what might have happened. But our character is about the only thing that we have that people will judge us by. There is an old saying that says we will be judged by our last worst act. So a flaw in our character will put us on the bad side of people's judgment of us. I personally see the problem as being we all have flaws in our character. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That is what God wanted for each of us. Again, all have fallen short of God's glory, except one. except one. Jesus lived his life without sin. He had no flaws of character. That's what he will be remembered for. That he was the Lamb without spot,
Come on.
who died to forgive the sins of the world.
Amen.
But we're not Jesus. We are not Jesus. So, do we want to be remembered for our flaws? Or do we want to be forgiven of them? Again, remember that we all have sinned. And that we all have flaws.
Yep.
I think sometimes the people who accuse other people forget that they too have flaws. That brings to mind what Jesus said to those who accused the woman caught in adultery. He who is without sin cast the first stone. All of the accusers dropped their stones and went away because they all knew they were sinners. In today's scripture, Jesus is being remembered, honored with a dinner from his friends for the things he's done. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus arrived at Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. The Lord knew that the Jewish leaders were out to arrest him and to kill him, as we learned last week. But he still returned to Bethany, only 2 miles from the very stronghold of those who plotted his death.
Amen.
Why would he do that? Why would he do that? You know, it seems that he went to Bethany so that he might spend a quiet time with his dear friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were having a dinner to honor Jesus because he was a dear friend, but also because he had raised Lazarus from the dead. They were having this dinner in the house of Simon, a former leper whom Jesus had healed of his leprosy. And of course, true to her personality, Martha was busy serving the dinner to all who attended. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive pure perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Over in Greece, I found a little bottle of what they call nard. And it's, if you open it up and smell it, it smells like flour. It smells like flour. Mary had once before visited with Jesus and worshipped at his feet. Here Mary anoints Jesus' feet with an expensive perfume called nard. It was an act of pure love on her part because she knew her friend and Lord was about to endure suffering and death. Jesus had told them plainly that he must suffer and die. So in a sense, Mary was showing her devotion to Jesus before it was too late. She was giving the flowers while he was still alive.
Amen.
And not bringing them to the funeral.
Amen.
Her act of love and worship was public, spontaneous, sacrificial, lavish, and personal. Her act of worship brought a fragrance throughout the very house in which they were dining. This time, when she bowed at the feet of Jesus, Mary took the place of a slave. It was a slave's duty to wash the feet of someone who had come into your house. And when she undid her hair, something Jewish women did not do in public, she humbled herself and laid her glory at his feet. But of course there were those who misunderstood and criticized her for what she did. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. You know, it was Judas who started the criticism, and sad to say, according to the Gospels of Matthew and Mark, the other disciples took up his disapproval. They didn't know Judas was doing the work of the devil, so they admired him for his concern for the poor. After all, he was the treasurer, and especially at Passover season, he would want to share with those who were less fortunate. Yeah. And this perfume was worth a year's wages. Until the very end, I believe the disciples thought that Judas was a devoted follower of Jesus. Maybe even he thought that too. And we must remember that John may have been right there with them at the time. The person who wrote this story. You must remember that the Gospel of John was written after Jesus ascended into heaven. So I am sure that John was looking back when he said that Judas was a thief and was in the habit of stealing money from the money box that he carried. So I believe John was right there, saying, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it? Leave her alone, Jesus replied. Leave her alone. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Here in John, Jesus defends Mary's actions, and elsewhere in the Gospels, he commends her for what she did. He tells those who are there that the perfume was for his burial. Then, Jesus once more tells them that he will soon be gone. And to them, it would sound as if you would soon die. In this one occasion where Jesus spoke those words, he does not say that he will rise again. But we know that he would. And we all know that he did rise from the dead. But I believe that here Jesus may have been thinking of the time when he would return to heaven and leave his disciples and the followers, the church, to carry on. He knew there would be much work for them to do because the poor and their needs would always be with them. It would seem that the Lord's rebuke of Judas may have played an important part in his decision to actually betray Jesus. Also, the fact that Jesus once again openly announced his death could have motivated Judas to take the opportunity to do what he planned to do. Matthew 26:14 gives the impression that immediately after this rebuke, Judas went to the priests and began to bargain to deliver Jesus into their hands. Now, we don't know why Judas did what he did. I'm going to say that again. We don't know why Judas did what he did. But perhaps he had hoped that Jesus would rise up to defeat Rome and set up his kingdom. In which case, Judas would be the treasurer of the kingdom. But it's odd that John records here the first words of Judas found anywhere in the four Gospels when he objected to being used. I also find it significant that his last words are found in Matthew 27:4, where he says, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. Those are the last words of Judas. Judas knew he was a sinner. Isn't it a shame that he couldn't discover the forgiveness that Jesus came to give him? And all who have sinned? Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and putting their faith in him. A large crowd of Jews found Jesus' location. Remember last week I said that the leaders were looking to find Jesus so that they could arrest him. But it seems that this crowd wanted to see and hear Jesus. But they also wanted to see and hear the testimony of Lazarus about his resurrection. Some of the Jewish leadership must have heard that people were believing in Jesus because of Lazarus' testimony. The fact that Lazarus was a walking miracle put him into a place of danger. The Jewish leaders wanted to kill him as well as Jesus. They tried to put Lazarus back in the tomb because he was leading people to faith in Christ. If you will not accept the evidence, you must get rid of it. Isn't that the way it goes in earth? What kind of reaction will your testimony bring? Will it be a flaw in your character? Will you try to get rid of the evidence? Will your testimony be one where people will remember your last worst act? Like that of Judas? Or will your testimony be one of resurrection and forgiveness? One that will bring hope to the lost sinners of this world. We have no recorded words from Lazarus in the New Testament. But his miraculous life was an effective witness of Jesus Christ. Our lives as Christians ought to be a beautiful witness to those who want to know Jesus and his message of hope and forgiveness.